Welcome to Poland Daily Culture. I'm Jon Carter, and on today's episode we're joined by candidate for Marso One project, Mikołaj Zieliński. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
Maybe you could tell us then something about the kind of skills or abilities or knowledge that you're going to need in order to transform from a candidate to a participant.
Okay, so indeed, Marso One, the only one requirement to apply for the mission was to be at least 18 years old. Marso One didn't require to have PhD in science or 10,000 hours as a pilot, like normally space agencies do, because, for example, training in NASA for astronaut candidates takes only 2 years, and then the mission can take 6 months or 1 year. Marso One is completely different. The mission will last to the end of our lives, and that's why more important than having PhD is to have high level of empathy, to be a team player, and these are things that are quite difficult to change. And they are looking for candidates who will be able to live with other teammates in confined environment for a quite long time, and they will not kill each other.
It's quite important.
And everything else they can teach. So that's why Marso One training will take 10 years. And during those 10 years, we'll have to learn everything what 4 people needs to know to survive on another planet. Mm-hmm. So 2 out of 4 team members, 2 will be trained in medical procedures, 2 others in first aid, 2 others in psychology, 2 others in chemical engineering, 2 others in electrical engineering, in software engineering, and we will share all possible skills that may be required. Uh-huh. So that's why the training is so long, and we will be also, as part of the training, we will have simulation missions. So we will be in some remote places on Earth. We will have a mock-up of Mars habitat, mm-hmm. and we will be living there pretending that we are on Mars. So if we want to go outdoor, we will have to wear a spacesuit. And if there is some emergency, some accidents, for example, CO2 level goes up suddenly and we are about to suffocate, then we will have to solve that problem. Such problems will be made up by people who will be running the selection. But we will have to show that we are able to solve those problems and survive, just in case if the same will happen on Mars. So, for example, the training will be full of those dealing with emergency procedures. Uh-huh. And they will put as much stress on us as possible just to see if we can really deal with this.
And what So, when that happens, you're going to be dealing with what probably psychologists and scientists, the most extreme things that they could think of. Does that sort of give you a sense of, fear or worry, or do you just kind of think this is a necessary part of the training process that you have to get through?
One thing is that I find it exciting. Uh-huh. And second thing is that I have no idea or it's quite difficult to say if you look at people who would be able to deal with this until you challenge them. And so I don't worry about the fact if I will be able to manage with all these challenges or not. I just want to go through it, and if I am a right person, then I'm lucky. If someone else is better, then great. Mm-hmm. But we need to send to Mars best people, because only then the mission will succeed. So I think the more people will try, the more chances we have that we will get the right stuff and really will be successful on Mars surface. So the psychologist who is responsible for the selection said that the training will be so hard that life on Mars comparing to the training will be like paradise.
Mars One is a highly ambitious project aiming to establish a permanent human settlement on Mars. It might sound like science fiction, but they have scheduled several unmanned missions in the next few years, which will create a habitable settlement before rigorously trained crews depart to Mars. This team is yet to be established. There is currently a 100-person shortlist under evaluation, with that eventually being whittled down to 24 before the candidates undergo some of the toughest psychological training known to humanity. The shortlist includes people from all around the world with a variety of backgrounds, including the only Polish citizen, Mikołaj Zieliński. Mikołaj is a software programmer with a passion for science, discovery and adventure. 5 years ago, he learnt about the Mars One project, and given that the only initial conditions for application were being aged over 18, he immediately applied. However, Mikołaj is not your average wannabe astronaut. His strong desire to discover and help civilization have led him to be prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice and never return to Earth. Maybe you could tell us then, what are the sort of similarities and differences between Earth and Mars?
So the most important thing is that Mars surface is exposed to radiation. The radiation comes from sun corona. It's called solar wind. And another source of radiation less dangerous is galactic cosmic ray, which mostly comes from the center of our galaxy, where we have probably a black hole. And on Earth, we are not exposed to this radiation because Earth has a magnetic field. And all magnetic, those high energy particles coming from sun corona, their trajectory is deflected, and the rest, which is able to go through, is stopped in ozone layer in the atmosphere, where we have those alpha particles, high energy particles, react with ozone, for example. There is nothing like this on Mars, neither atmosphere nor magnetic field. So the problem on Mars will be that if we want to go outdoor for surface exploration, we'll be able to go only for 3 hours every 3 days, for example, or something like this. Because by spending more time on Mars surface and being exposed to radiation, there will increase risks of getting cancer later in our life. Something similar is also a limit for NASA astronauts or other astronauts living in International Space Station. If they are also exposed to radiation. And for example, Scott Kelly, who was in ISS for 1 year, he will never go again to space because he has spent already so much time in ISS that if he goes again, then the risk of getting cancer will be more than 5%. And this is the limit for NASA astronauts, for example. And we'll have to also follow the same limits. Another important difference between Mars and Earth is gravity. Gravity on Mars is 3 times lower than on Earth. So we will be able to jump like NASA astronauts were jumping on the moon, but not as high and not so smoothly because Moon's gravity is 6 times lower than Earth's. Mars is just 3. But it will have effect on our bodies. For example, muscle volume will decrease, bone density may decrease, and we'll have to exercise 2 hours a day just to keep stay healthy. Otherwise, we may have some symptoms which are typical for osteoporosis. And another important difference is temperature. Average temperature on Mars is minus 63 degrees of Celsius. The lowest, it can be up to minus 140. And the warmest day in summer on slopes that are exposed to sun, it can be up to 23 degrees. And another important difference is lack of breathable air. Mars' atmosphere consists of carbon dioxide, 95% of carbon dioxide, and is 100 times thinner than Earth's atmosphere. So again, if we will be going for surface exploration, we will have to wear full spacesuits with like NASA or like astronauts or cosmonauts going for spacewalk or exploring moon surface 50 years ago.